What if I told you that being good with money has almost nothing to do with how smart you are? Seriously, forget all the complicated formulas and fancy finance degrees. Today, we're going to dive into a really radical idea that building real wealth is all about your behavior, not your brain power. So let me tell you about two guys. On one side, you have Ronald Reed, a humble janitor. On the other, Richard Fiscone, a Harvard-educated finance exec. Now guess who ended up with an $8 million fortune and who went bankrupt? You got it, the janitor. So how on earth did that happen? Well, Ronald Reed's secret wasn't some kind of hidden genius, it was just patience. He lived a simple life, he saved what he could, and he put it into good, solid companies. And then, and this is the really hard part, he just waited for decades. He let that quiet magic of compounding do its thing. Fiscone, on the other hand, he had the huge income, an 18,000 square foot mansion, and, of course, a mountain of debt to go with it. When the 2008 financial crisis hit, his whole world just completely fell apart. And that's really the heart of it. Financial success isn't a hard science, it's a soft skill. A patient janitor can absolutely run circles around a greedy Harvard MBA. Your behavior is so much more important than your credentials. And that brings us to the first huge myth we need to bust about money.
Yeah, that whole idea that you have to be some kind of brilliant financial wizard to get ahead. The truth? It's way more complicated, and it has a lot to do with your own personal story and two really powerful forces we tend to forget about: luck and risk.
Okay, first things first, we've got to get this one thing straight. No one is crazy. The way you handle your money, even the stuff that looks totally bizarre to someone else, it makes perfect sense to you. Why? Because it's all shaped by your unique life experiences. I mean, if you grew up during a time of crazy high inflation, you're going to see risk completely differently than someone who only ever saw the stock market go up. Our own little slice of history basically writes our financial rulebook. But, our personal experience isn't the whole picture. There are these two other massive forces at play, kind of like invisible currents pulling us around: luck and risk. They're really just two sides of the same coin, and they remind us that we're not always in the driver's seat of our own financial lives. And this story just illustrates it perfectly. Bill Gates was obviously brilliant, right? But he also had some insane one-in-a-million luck. He went to one of the only high schools on the entire planet that had a computer back in 1968. Now, his best friend, Kent Evans, was just as smart, just as driven. They were going to build a company together. But Kent was hit with one-in-a-million risk. He died in a mountaineering accident before he even graduated. You see? Same powerful force, same magnitude, just pointing in opposite directions.
Bill Gates himself said it best. Once you realize how huge a role luck and risk play, you stop trying to copy these extreme outlier stories. Instead, you start looking for the broader patterns, the more reliable lessons you can actually use.
And that leads us right into the second and maybe even more dangerous myth: the idea that the goal is always, always more. Let me tell you, this mindset is one of the biggest traps you can fall into.
So check out this number, $100 million. That's what Rajat Gupta was worth back in 2008. This guy was the former CEO of McKinsey, literally the most prestigious consulting firm in the world. He came from poverty and climbed to the absolute top. He had everything you could possibly want. But get this, $100 million just wasn't enough for him. He wanted to be a billionaire. So he started engaging in illegal insider trading, a crime that sent him to prison and completely destroyed his reputation. And he's not the only one. Think about Bernie Madoff. He was already running a hugely successful, totally legitimate business that made him ridiculously rich. But it wasn't enough. He needed more. And so he built that infamous Ponzi scheme that just ruined thousands and thousands of lives, including his own.
And that's the whole problem with more, isn't it? The single hardest financial skill is just getting the goalpost to stop moving. The moment you start comparing yourself to other people, you're playing a game you can never, ever win, because there's always someone with more. And it pushes people to risk the things they actually have and need for things they absolutely don't.
This story just says it all. The author Joseph Heller was at a party hosted by some billionaire, and someone points out that the host made more money in a single day than Heller had earned from his entire masterpiece novel, Catch-22. And Heller's response was just perfect. He said, "Yes, but I have something he will never have. Enough." Wow. That right there, that is the real prize. All right, so once you figure out what enough means for you, you run straight into our third myth. We are all obsessed with the idea of getting rich, but we almost never talk about the completely different skill of staying rich.
Think about it. Getting wealthy. That's all about offense. It's about taking risks, being optimistic, putting yourself out there. But staying wealthy? Whoa, that's a totally different ballgame. That's all about defense. It requires humility, accepting that some of your wins were just pure luck. It requires a healthy dose of fear, respecting that the market can take away everything it gave you. It's about survival.
I mean, take a look at Jesse Livermore. This guy was maybe the greatest stock trader of his time. During the 1929 crash, he bet against the market and made what would be $3 billion today in a single day. He was a genius at getting rich, but that incredible success made him feel invincible. He couldn't flip that switch in his head to preservation. He just kept making bigger and crazier bets until eventually he lost every penny and, tragically, he took his own life.
So, if you want to know the real secret to long-term financial success, it's this one word: survival. That's it. Compounding, that incredible engine of wealth, it only works if you give it years and years to do its thing without being interrupted. Getting wiped out, even just once, means you're back at square one. So the best financial plan has nothing to do with chasing the highest returns. It's about being able to stick around long enough to let the magic happen.
Okay, this brings us to our final and maybe the most important myth of all, the idea that wealth is what you see. The fancy car, the huge house. But what if I told you that real wealth is actually invisible?
Here's the distinction, and it's super important. Being rich is about having a high current income. It's visible. It's the $100,000 car you see on the street. But wealth is hidden. It's the income you don't spend. It's the expensive car you didn't buy. It's the first-class upgrade you turned down. Wealth is the money you have saved and invested, working for you in the background.
And this creates this really funny thing called the man-in-the-car paradox. We buy all this fancy stuff because we want other people to admire us, right? But think about it. When you see someone drive by in a really nice car, do you think, wow, that driver is so cool? Probably not. What you actually think is, wow, if I had that car, people would think I'm cool. See? The admiration we're trying to buy almost never actually lands on us.
So if it's not about buying stuff to impress people, then what's the whole point? What's the real goal? It's this. The absolute highest form of wealth, the biggest dividend money can ever pay, is control over your own time. It's the ability to wake up every single morning and say, I can do whatever I want today. That is real freedom. That is the ultimate purpose of being wealthy. Which leaves us all with one final thought. Forget what everyone else is doing. Forget what society tells you you're supposed to want. Just ask yourself this one simple but incredibly powerful question. What is your money really for?